truism. You called the BBC, as I say, left-wing, hypocritical, patronising, more in keeping with the Soviet-style country. Did you ever visit a Soviet-style country and watch the broadcasting there?
Yeah.
And you think it's like the BBC's?
I'm not going to ask questions about tweets that I posted 12 years ago.
That wasn't, well...
Whenever it was.
Maybe it's hard to keep track of your tweets, but it was quoted in the quoted in the Daily Mail last month. Now, only the other day, in your capacity,
it might have been quoted in the Daily Mail last month. That doesn't mean I posted it last month.
Not a hostile publication, though. Only the other day, in your capacity as Culture Secretary, you tweeted at Laura Kuenssberg, the BBC's political editor, and you attacked a tweet that she'd sent, and the word you used was ridiculous. Do you regret the fact that you tweeted at her?
I didn't tweet at her.
Well, you copied her in to the tweet.
I quote tweeted her, and my point was not that Laura's tweet was ridiculous. Laura is one of the best, most professional journalists in the business who has been here a very long time. And is probably the best journalist in the business. What I was commenting on, but I realise that some people don't have the ability to interpret a short number of characters in the way that they're intended, which is actually the reason why I deleted it, and it is because what I was saying was that the message she had been sent, which she was quoting, was ridiculous. Not that Laura's ridiculous, but the message that she was quoting was ridiculous.
Well, actually, the wording used was that it is, you said, you must realise this is ridiculous. But regardless of the exact words that you used, in your capacity as Culture Secretary, given how much trouble you've got in over your tweets in the past, you must realise that it's inappropriate for you as Culture Secretary to be tackling the BBC's political editor about the content of either a report or one of her tweets.
Attack is a word you use a lot, and I wouldn't call it an attack at all.
All right. You called everyone who works at the Daily Mirror, presumably both women and men, bottom-feeding scum.
How many years ago was that?
That was 2013.
There you go. How many years ago was that?
There's a continuity, I think. I mean, unless you're saying that everything you've ever written, everything that you've ever said previously has to be discounted because there's a statute of limitations. I mean, we hear that for very young people. You know, teenagers, for example, are allowed to say things inappropriate. You weren't a teenager when you sent that. You've got a history of attacking journalists. I mean, I'll leave aside your testicle tweet because we discussed that quite recently. But you tweeted LBC's James O'Brien, as we know, calling him a public school posh boy F-wit. And that would fall into the category of abuse, would it not, under your own online safety legislation?
Chairman, I'm not going to answer any of these questions. I find them quite personal and attack. If you'd like me...
I would say just one thing. I did question John very closely on this. The one relevant point about this is the fact that you are Secretary of State, and should the online harms legislation come to pass in the way in which it seems it will come to pass, you will have enormous power at that point, particularly on sign-off and secondary legislative power. So I do think it is honestly, I think it's very credible.
I think it's important that perhaps I answer. The reason Mr. Nicholson is quite right. He asked me about the journalist tweets in the past, and I will answer that for the purpose of this committee. I sent that tweet when my daughter's neighbour told me a journalist was outside the house photographing her in the house and had followed her on a dog walk down a path. That was the mother that sent that tweet.
Yeah, but that was nothing to do with James O'Brien.
I know you don't want to hear my answer, but I request the right to give it.
It wasn't about James O'Brien.
That
was a different issue. That was a Mirror journalist, I think.
Order. The Secretary of State just answer that question.
I will answer that next. So that is why it was the mother, Nadine Dorries, who posted that tweet when my daughter's neighbour opposite said, "I'm trying to ring your daughter, I'm trying to ring her. There's a journalist outside the house photographing her in the house, and he's just followed her on the dog walk." That's when I sent that tweet after that. So, and I think I would expect any mother, frankly,
Yes.
who was distressed to do that. On the James O'Brien tweet, I think
I don't think. And I think a lot of mothers sitting listening to this will not welcome the implication that because they're trying to protect their children, they're allowed to send abusive tweets. And I know you used that argument to the previous committee. But as I said, that's nothing to do with James O'Brien. So let's move on to your various
because we do know you love your pile-on tweets and what have you. So James O'Brien, I think if you search the number of times I've tweeted James O'Brien, I think you might find it's 2. If you search the number of times James O'Brien has persistently tweeted me, to the point where we had at my office a number of years ago, probably about 18 months, 2 years ago, had to write to Global complaining that his behaviour was stepping into the realms of harassment. That was at the point which I sent that tweet. If you search James O'Brien's tweets of me... I
have searched that because at the other committee...
Including the ones
at
that
the other
deleted.
At the other committee, you said that you'd responded to abuse from him, and I have actually searched that. And I can't find this abuse that you talk about, but I have found you asking for James O'Brien to get the sack. You also implied that he had mental health problems. You said, I don't think he's a well man. He needs removing from his platform abuse. And you said, separate tweet, you said, I've had to email his employer a number of times. Now, I don't think it's appropriate for you as a politician to be trying to get somebody the sack. But let's move on to another tweet that you sent.
Can I answer that?
Please do.
So, Mr. Chairman, just what I'd say is that, along with a number of female politicians, I am subjected to a small number of men who do tweet about me obsessively, aggressively, and pleasantly, and James O'Brien is one of them.
Well, I can't find those tweets that you mentioned, but here's something that you did retweet about him. I'll quote it. I believe James O'Brien of LBC fame is a hate preacher, a liar, a misogynist, a UK hater, and an apologist for Islamic atrocities. You're in no position to talk about James O'Brien saying offensive things about you. You tweeted that. I mean, apart from being actionable and defamatory, it's grotesque. Well, I'm glad you agree.
I don't agree with you, and I have.
You think it's appropriate?
I haven't come here today to answer to tweets that I sent years ago. I do understand, the context in my role as a Secretary of State, but as I said, as a female politician...
Nothing to do with being a female politician.
It's nothing to... As many females do, have to respond assertively to the numerous aggressive, unpleasant tweets. And I would, looking at your own tweet history, wouldn't say it was something to be particularly proud of either.
Oh, you'll find no abuse in my tweet history. Otherwise, I'm sure you'd have produced it today. I don't think it's a defence. There's no abuse in my tweet history. I don't think it's a defence to say because you're a woman, you're allowed to accuse people of being Islamic atrocity supporters. That does a grave disservice to women politicians. I suppose my point is, quite apart from the fact that you hold enormous power in this current role, do you think it's appropriate that somebody who behaves so consistently in an intemperate way should be in charge of online safety legislation in the way that you are going to be, because you have a pattern going back many, many years of saying things that are inappropriate, tweeting things that are inappropriate, and often deleting them?
I'm not going to answer that question. That's nothing to do with my role as Secretary of State or DCMS.
Well, I think it is. Chair.
Thank you.